Welcome to Pipeline Safety Orientation. You need to know that safety is a priority to us and our clients. You are important to the company. The success of the company depends on you. At the same time, you're important as a team member, working to help keep everyone safe at the job site. Our goal is to have an excellent safety record and will be attributed to strict safety policies, such as we believe all injuries can be prevented.
Working safely is a priority in every job. The proper PPE is required for every job. We are convinced that accident prevention is good business. It increases productivity and minimizes human suffering. Management is responsible for providing a reasonable and safe workplace. Employees are ultimately responsible for their own personal safety. They must follow safe work practices as a condition of employment. There is no job in this company that cannot be done safely. Don't take shortcuts. Don't take risks. There is only one way to do your job, the safe way. Always talk with your supervisor if something looks unsafe or if you see a hazard that could injure you or others. Most workplace injuries are caused by unsafe acts, such as taking shortcuts or not following safe working procedures. Anyone observed violating a safety rule or procedure will be told how to do the job safely and why this is important. If an employee continues to work unsafely, he or she will be suspended from work or terminated. If the safety violation is serious, the employee is subject to termination immediately. Safety is not just part of your job, it is a requirement for your employment. Management will audit safety performance and the working environment. Safety and health controls require the participation of all employees to improve safety awareness and prevent accidents and injuries. Your help is important in keeping the workplace safe for everyone. We need you on this team. We appreciate every effort that you make for safety. We welcome any and all helpful comments. Together we can make the difference. Together we can prevent accidents and injuries.
Okay, I think we're ready to get started. The company is committed to safety and health as the primary consideration in all of our activities. We operate and expect our contractors to operate under the assumption that all accidents are preventable. No work shall begin without first addressing and resolving all safety issues.
Proper procedures and controls reduce risk to health and safety. Following the rules also helps protect the environment. That's why all employees must follow project guidelines and comply with all applicable state and federal regulations. One of the keys to performing any task safely and efficiently is having the proper tools. Daily work permits, JSAs, and target safety, including up, down, and arounds, are tools to help remind us to work safely. When used properly, it guides us to ask questions about the procedures or work that we are about to perform. These questions can ensure that we have not overlooked anything obvious that will cause harm to other persons, the equipment, our environment, or ourselves. The process also helps inform and protect individuals who may not be fully aware about the specific day's events. An additional vital function of the daily work permits, JSAs, and target safety, including up, down, and arounds, are communications. These forms facilitate communication between those doing the work and those who could be affected by that work. A good, clear understanding of what work is to be performed and the equipment impacted is absolutely necessary to ensure the safety of all involved. Hazardous work includes both routine and non-routine activities. Examples of hazardous work are maintenance or service work requiring lockout-tagout, trenching or excavation, confined space entry, hot work, line separation, abrasive blasting, opening vessels to atmosphere, tank isolation, and tank cleaning. All supervisors or foremen are responsible for safety in their operations and will be held responsible for any incidents. All hazards or environmentally sensitive situations should be assessed and addressed daily at the tailgate safety meeting. Special meetings should be called every time a new task is started, a new hazard presents itself, or a new worker is brought onto the job. It is this company's policy that each worker has the right and responsibility to stop any task that they feel is unsafe until the conditions are addressed and safe work practices determined. No worker will be penalized in any way for raising a legitimate safety concern. The possession, use, or sale of alcohol, drugs, or drug paraphernalia Weapons, firearms, explosives, or any other hazardous material is strictly prohibited on any company property or project job site. The company has a serious commitment towards safety for all employees and contractors. True or false? Safety is part of the job and a condition of employment. True or false? Most jobs have some exposure to electricity. You may be working with an electrical tool or machine or simply plugging a light or extension cord into an outlet. These are everyday activities you do at home as well as at work. Remember, electricity always deserves special attention and caution. An accident with electricity can be deadly. A single mistake with an electrical tool, plug, cord, or circuit can kill you. This is why the company has adopted special safe working procedures regarding electricity. Here are basic rules that can save your life. Do not perform any electrical maintenance or repair of any kind unless you have been trained in electrical safety and authorized by your employer. Be alert for electrical hazards. Report immediately any smoking or sparking in a switch, electrical cord, tool, or power outlet. Report warm, hot, damaged, or defective wiring, electrical cords and plugs. Then discontinue using them. Never use a tool or equipment that causes an electrical tingle to the touch. Unplug or disconnect it, and take it out of service so no one else will use it. Tell your supervisor immediately. Never use an electrical tool or equipment while standing in water. Many electrical tools have a third prong on the plug. This is a grounding device to protect you from electrical shock. Do not use the tool or machine if the grounding prong is broken off. If a tool does not have a three-prong plug, look carefully at the case. Unless it is marked or labeled as being double insulated, do not use it. Use ground fault circuit interrupters, GFCI, when working with electricity outdoors, especially when using extension cords, portable powered hand tools, machinery, and equipment in wet or sweaty conditions. Do not use an electrical or extension cord that is spliced, cut, taped, or has damage to the outer insulation. If the plug is damaged or pulled loose from the insulation, do not use it. Take it out of service and tell your supervisor. Keep clear access of at least 3 feet around electrical circuit boxes, main switches, and shutoffs. When should you report a suspected problem with an electrical tool, cord, lighting fixture, or any type of electrically powered equipment? Immediately? The next time you see your supervisor? When maintenance personnel are available? At the end of your shift? When is it safe to use an electrical tool or equipment while standing in water, or if you feel an electrical tingle when touching the tool or equipment? Whenever you are wearing rubber boots and gloves? When there are people there to help you in an emergency? It is never safe to work under these circumstances, when the circuit is protected by a GFCI. To prevent serious injuries and even deaths, lockout and tagout procedures will be followed to isolate hazardous energy before working on powered machines, electrical circuits, pipelines, and other systems that can cause injury. Only authorized persons who have been trained on how to isolate hazardous energy safely are allowed to perform a lockout or tagout. Authorized personnel means designated employees who are issued locks, keys, tags, and who have been trained in your company's written lockout-tagout procedures. Authorized persons are the ones who actually perform the lockout and tagout. They may or may not be personnel who normally operate the equipment, machine, or circuit being locked out. Only the authorized person can re-energize equipment when work is finished. Affected personnel are individuals who normally operate or are indirectly exposed to equipment, machinery, or circuits that are being locked out or tagged out. Other personnel are those who possibly may enter, pass through, or be indirectly exposed to a lockout or tagout situation. Affected and other personnel have 3 simple rules to follow. Never try to turn on or use a machine or electrical circuit that has a lock and/or tag like the one shown here. Never remove a warning tag. Report any powered machine or electrical circuit that is not working properly. The machine or circuit must be immediately placed out of service and tagged "Do Not Operate." According to company policy, who is authorized to perform a lockout and tagout? Anyone on the job site? Everyone on the job site? Only persons trained and authorized by the company or the client? Your supervisor? Under the lockout and tagout procedures, Affected personnel are those who must work in the area where a lockout and tagout has been performed. True or false? Only authorized personnel can remove a lockout and tagout. True or false? Affected personnel should never remove a tagout or attempt to use a valve, circuit, tool, or piece of equipment that has been locked out and or tagged out. True or false? One of the most important safety precautions for any job is the proper selection and use of personal protective equipment, PPE. Work using powered equipment, tools, or chemicals may require PPE for your eyes, face, hands, ears, or other parts of your body. Always read the product label, material safety data sheet for chemicals, or the tool or machine manufacturer's instructions before you start work. Use PPE as specified. Let's make one point very clear about PPE. Hard hats, safety glasses with side shields, and safety toe footwear are required on all company job sites. Methods of eye protection include safety glasses with side shields, splash goggles, face shields, and welding goggles. Safety glasses with side shields are appropriate for work that could cause something to strike your eyes. Other tasks may require a full face shield worn over your safety glasses. Check with your supervisor. When you are mixing or using a chemical, you must wear well-fitting safety splash goggles. Regular eyeglasses or sunglasses are not adequate for eye protection for work. There are many general hazards that can endanger your eyes and face. For example, flying or falling objects such as metal chips, pieces of wood, or debris, splashing chemicals and corrosives, swinging objects such as ropes, chains, tree limbs, pressurized air or liquids, glare and heat. Head protection usually means wearing a hard hat. Remember, hard hats are required on all company job sites, and where on-the-job situations expose you to flying or falling objects, work being performed overhead, electrical shock or burns, and objects or structures where you could strike your head while doing a task. Hard hats must be of a type that is appropriate for the work being performed. Follow these rules for wearing a hard hat. Do not wear your hard hat on top of any other cap or headgear. In cold weather, wear close-fitting winter liners that are designed for use with hard hats. Make sure the headband is adjusted to the right size and your hat sits squarely on your head, not tipped back or to one side. Do not drill ventilation holes in the shell. This can weaken the shell and destroy the hard hat's insulating properties. Never paint the shell. Solvents in the paint may soften the shell material, reducing its electrical insulating properties. Never carry objects such as cigarettes or tools inside the hard hat. They can compromise the hard hat's shock-absorbing capabilities. Hearing protection means using earplugs, ear muffs, or ear cups to reduce loud noises and sounds entering your ears. These types of protective devices provide important insulation from loud noise in the workplace. If an area is designated as a high noise area, or the task involves high noise levels, you must wear proper hearing protection. Follow requirements of your employer's hearing conservation program. Just remember, if it's too loud in an area to hear normal conversation from about 2 feet away, hearing protection may be necessary. Check with your supervisor. Proper selection and use of hand protection can prevent a range of injuries to hands and fingers. Injuries suffered when cutting or using tools, handling rough or sharp items, using hazardous chemicals, or working with electricity all may require the use of gloves as PPE. Hand and finger injuries can involve cuts and punctures, broken and crushed bones, even full or partial amputation. Cuts or punctures may seem minor on the surface, but if they go through the skin, they can sever nerves, tendons, or ligaments. Wounds and burns can also get infected. Gloves can protect hands against exposures to irritants that can cause dermatitis or symptoms like swelling, itching, rash, burning, or blisters. Types of hand protection include insulated gloves for heat or cold, leather gloves for rough or sharp-edged surfaces, fabric gloves for handling slippery objects, neoprene or nitrile rubber gloves for working with chemicals, corrosives. Foot protection means wearing boots or shoes designed for the work environment. You are required to wear safety-toed footwear with a well-defined heel on all company job sites. Protective footwear must be of sturdy construction, in good condition with nothing hanging loose. It must have leather uppers and non-slip soles. And one more thing, always wear socks with shoes. Respiratory protection includes use of disposable dust masks, cartridge-type and air-supplied respirators. Always read the MSDS for chemicals to see if special respiratory protection is required. If use of a respirator is specified, you must undergo a pulmonary function test and complete special safety training in advance. Do not wear a respirator unless you have been medically examined, properly fit tested, and trained. Fall protection equipment includes personal fall arrest systems and components, harness, lanyards, shock absorbers, snaps, hooks. Fall protection must be used any time that you are working on an elevation higher than 6 feet and in close proximity to an unguarded edge. Personnel must have special training for the proper selection and use of fall protection equipment. Check with your supervisor if you believe that a work situation requires fall protection. If fall protection is required for a task, do not perform the work without the proper equipment and training. Here's another thing to keep in mind. Part of your job is to keep your personal protective equipment clean and properly stored. If your equipment needs repair or replacement, tell your supervisor immediately. Hard hats, safety glasses with side shields, and safety-toed footwear are required on all company job sites. True or false? The company allows anyone to wear and use a respirator if the job requires it. True or false? All personnel working on a company job site must undergo which of the following before they can wear a respirator? A pulmonary function test, fit test, special training on proper selection, use, and storage of the respirator, all of the above. If noise at a work site is so loud that you have difficulty hearing normal conversation from people standing 2 or 3 feet from you, you may need to use hearing protection. True or false? The type of hand protection needed is based on the type of work being done. True or false? Leather gloves are usually your best protection for working with rough or sharp-edged surfaces. True or false? Neoprene or nitrile rubber gloves are usually your best selection when working with chemicals or corrosives. True or false? Which of the following series of PPE requires special training in addition to this safety orientation? Eye protection, respiratory protection, fall protection, 2 and 3 above. Lifting and carrying are parts of the job. Back injuries don't have to be. Following safe lifting procedures is a requirement for your employment. Before you lift something, be sure that you can safely handle it by yourself. When possible, use a lifting device, a dolly, cart, forklift, crane, and hoist. Before you manually lift a load, test it to see if it is too heavy or awkward for you to lift alone. If you need help, don't try to do it alone. Avoid lifting loads that are above shoulder height. If the load is manageable, follow these rules for safe lifting. Make sure your footing is firm. Check the pathway to be sure it is clear of trip and slip hazards or obstructions. Lift with the strong muscles in your leg, not your weaker back muscles. Keep your back as straight as possible. Do not lean over to lift. Turn by moving your feet, not by twisting your body. Hug the load. Try to keep your back as straight up and down as possible. Use these same techniques when setting down your load. Bending at your knees, leaning over at the waist, and lifting while your back is in line with the floor is an improper lifting position. It puts unnecessary and avoidable strain on the back even when the load you are lifting is comparatively light. Leaning over to lift is an improper method and expressly prohibited. Notify your supervisor at the beginning of the shift if you have back pain or have suffered back strain or injury while off duty. This is important because if you have suffered back strain or injury off the job, a fall, sports, or some other injury, you must not begin work without discussing it with your supervisor first. If a load is too heavy for you to manage alone, you should take special precautions, get help, tell your supervisor after you do the lift, tell your supervisor if you hurt your back while making the lift. The basic rule for safe lifting is bend at your waist, not with your knees. Let the strong muscles in your legs do the lifting. Bend with your knees, not at your waist. 2 and 3 above. Which of the following are also important considerations for lifting and carrying loads safely? Do not twist your back. Keep your back as straight up and down as possible. Hug the load as close to your body as possible. All of the above. If you think you have injured your back while at work, when should you notify your supervisor? At the end of your shift, before you start work the next week, when pain is so great that you know you must be seen by a doctor, immediately, as soon as the injury happens. Do not operate powered machines, tools, or equipment unless you have been trained and authorized by the company. Before you work with a powered machine for the first time, you must read the operations manual. Make sure that you know the contents, such as personal protective equipment required when working with the machine, location of emergency stop buttons and safety switches, the meaning of labels for emergencies and warnings, operations of switches and electrical control devices, operation of pneumatics, hydraulics, and other controls, proper procedures for changing components, instruction for speed controls and adjustments, safe maintenance, fueling, and adjustments to the machine, safe use of any attachments, automatic feeders, sensors, or similar devices, how to perform a safe and proper shutdown of the machine. Pre-use inspections on equipment must be completed and documented. The seat belt must be worn while operating motor vehicles and powered equipment with rollover protection or a protected operating cam. Backup alarms must be installed and working on all equipment. All booms and blades must be lowered while equipment is not in use. Trucks with their rear view obstructed may require backup alarms. Now for a warning. Repair work to a powered machine, tool, or equipment can only be performed by trained and qualified personnel. Do not attempt to make repairs yourself without specific permission from your supervisor. Before anyone works on powered equipment, lockout-tagout procedures must be followed that effectively isolate all energy sources to the specific machine, tool, or equipment being de-energized. Proper use of a tool is important for safety as well as doing the job effectively. Do not use a machine or piece of equipment unless you have been trained on how to use it safely. Your supervisor must ensure that each contractor employee under his or her authority demonstrates safe work practices. This includes the safe use of hand tools. Inspect a hand tool before you use it. Tell your supervisor if it is broken, defective, or inadequate for the task. Use the right tool for the job. If you're not sure about what is the right tool for a particular task, ask your supervisor. Keep all of your tools in good condition. Store them properly when they are not in use. When starting work at the top of the day or when returning from a break, make a quick visual check of your work area before you begin. Keep materials, tools, and equipment in a secure and stable position to prevent falling or rolling. Keep only the tools and materials you need for the job in the work area. All unused tools and materials should be properly stored. Don't lay material or equipment on electrical cords or hoses. Clean up work areas as the job progresses, especially when you're finished. Place trash, scrap metal, oily rags, and other discards in their proper containers. You must be trained and authorized by the company before you can use powered equipment, tools, or equipment. True or false? Always use the right tool for the job and inspect any tool before you use it. True or false? To prevent accidents, when is the best time to make a visual check of your work area? Before you start work each shift, when you return from lunch or a break, immediately after an accident or near miss. 1 and 2 above. Fire safety begins with fire prevention. Here are things that you can do to prevent a fire in the workplace. Observe all no smoking and no open flames signs at all job sites. Remember that smoking is prohibited on all job locations. Only approved safety containers are acceptable for transporting and handling flammable liquids. Keep a clean work area. Do not allow trash to pile up. Know the fire exits, evacuation routes, and designated gathering areas at all work locations. The designated gathering area is a predetermined place where personnel will meet in the event of an evacuation. A roll call will be taken there to ensure that everyone is accounted for. Keep traffic paths to fire exits, fire extinguishers, and emergency evacuation routes clear of obstructions. Know where fire extinguishers are located. Do not hang anything on a fire extinguisher. Don't block access to a fire extinguisher. Tell your supervisor if you have used a fire extinguisher or if you find one that needs service. Report any fire extinguisher that is missing the extinguisher bracket or pin. Fire extinguishers are installed throughout company facilities, in company vehicles, and on client facilities and job sites. Extinguishers are clearly marked with signs or labels. Fire extinguishers have been specifically placed in designated locations to be near you in the event of an emergency. Know where the fire extinguisher is in your work area. Fire extinguishers are classified according to the type of fire that they are designed to extinguish. The three most common classes of fires that you are most likely to encounter: Class A, B, and C. Class A, ordinary combustibles or flammable materials such as paper, wood, clothing, rubber, and some plastics. Class B, flammable or combustible liquids such as gasoline, kerosene, paint, paint thinners, propane, and chemicals. Class C, energized electrical equipment such as tools, appliances, or machines, or circuits including wiring, plugs, fixtures, junctions, and panel or distribution boxes. Always report any fire extinguisher which needs to be recharged or when the gauge is not showing in the green zone. An indicator needle pointing out of the green area into the red means that there may be too little or too much pressure. All extinguishers require documented monthly inspections and at least annual maintenance or service. A tag showing the last service date should be attached to extinguishers. Labeling showing the type of fire extinguisher should be clearly visible from the front of where the extinguisher is mounted. The pin should be in place and secured with a plastic tie seal. Notify your supervisor about any fire extinguisher that has been used. Arrangements then can be made to have it serviced. If an extinguisher is used even a little, it may continue to leak pressure. Over a few days, the pressure can discharge and the extinguisher will be unusable. Remember PASS, P-A-S-S, when using a fire extinguisher. P, break the seal and pull the pin or puncture the cartridge. A, aim the nozzle at the base of the fire. S, squeeze the trigger, stand away, and move in on fire. S, sweep the extinguisher from side to side, covering the area of the fire. Use the extinguisher only if you are sure that it is safe to do so. Don't take chances. Despite all precautions, there is always the possibility of fire, chemical release, or other emergency at a work site. Smoking is prohibited on all company job sites except in specifically designated areas, inside of all company facilities, in all company vehicles, all of the above. Regarding emergency evacuation, the gathering area is a place where there are a number of hazards gathered together. True or false? If you notice that a fire extinguisher has been used or that the gauge is not in the green, you should report this to your supervisor immediately. True or false? Class A fire extinguishers are used to put out fires involving flammable or combustible liquids such as gasoline, kerosene, paint, paint thinners, propane, and chemicals. True or false? When using a fire extinguisher, the letters PASS mean push, arm, save, survive, pass, ask, sit, sweep, point, alert, sweep, survive, pull, aim, squeeze, sweep. It is necessary to have an evacuation plan in place that everyone knows and understands. The emergency evacuation plan should designate primary and secondary escape routes from each workplace. If you're in a building or structure, the plan should show evacuation routes and exits for getting to the outside in the quickest, safest, and most direct manner. Evacuation route maps for a facility should be posted in a sufficient number of places for easy reference. If you're working outside, the emergency evacuation plan should identify a designated gathering place that's a safe distance from the emergency. Job site evacuation routes and designated gathering areas should be discussed in advance for the specific job site and situations. Usually this should be done during the morning's tailgate safety meeting. In any evacuation, all personnel should go to the designated gathering area and remain there until a roll call can be taken. The roll call confirms that all on-duty personnel are accounted for. Never re-enter an evacuated building or job site for any reason until your supervisor has announced the all clear. Emergency evacuation plans include maps posted in an area to show escape routes and also the location of the gathering area. True or false? Under what circumstances should you re-enter an evacuated building or area on a company facility? When the fire is out and smoke has cleared, when the all clear is given by a supervisor, when you see someone else re-enter, when it is necessary to save someone's life. You have a right to know about any hazardous chemicals that you may work with or around while doing your job. The company has a written hazard communications program that makes this information available at every work location. Your employer also should have a written HazCom plan for your own company's safety records. These procedures are in place to comply with company safety rules and requirements of OSHA's Hazard Communication Standard. Under these programs, all personnel must be trained about their right to know regarding hazardous chemicals at work. The company maintains a copy of the Written Hazard Communication Program, a chemical inventory list, and material safety data sheets, MSDSs, for each hazardous chemical authorized for use at the job site. They are kept in the MSDS manual. Material safety data sheets are available for you to read and use at any time while you are at work. Each material safety data sheet supplies important information about a chemical or product. You should read the MSDS for each chemical or product you work with. It specifies the kind of safety equipment you must use when working with the chemical. It also gives first aid instructions in case the chemical injures you. The MSDS will tell you a substance's chemical and trade name, any hazardous ingredients, physical hazard data, fire and explosion data, health hazard data procedures, first aid, reactivity data, spill and leak procedures, personal protective equipment required, labeling information, manufacturer's name, address, and phone number, other special precautions. Always read the label or MSDS before using a chemical product. Follow instructions. Do not mix paints, solvents, or other chemicals together unless label instructions tell you to do so. As a rule, if you get a chemical on your body, wash it off immediately. Always tell your supervisor about any suspicious or unanticipated chemical release, spill, or leak. Seek first aid if necessary. If you have questions about a chemical, ask your supervisor. All chemicals must be stored in the original or approved container with a proper label on the container. Any container not properly labeled with health, fire, reactivity, and other specific hazards information should be given to the job site supervisor for labeling or proper disposal. Information that you need to know about working with the chemical product safely is on the label and MSDS. Always follow these instructions for safe handling, use, and storage of chemicals. As we talked about earlier, MSD information includes the chemical name, the manufacturer's name and address, health information and whether the chemical is a carcinogen, required personal protective equipment, first aid and emergency response instructions, specific instructions for the safe storage and disposal of the product, and other important data. Now let's consider basic safety and common sense rules for working with chemical products. Keep chemical containers closed when not in use. Check containers regularly for leaks. Keep flammables, spontaneous combustibles, and explosive materials away from heat sources. When required, check protective clothing before use to be sure there are no rips or tears. Wash hands thoroughly before eating, drinking, or smoking. Thoroughly clean tools, machinery, equipment, PPE, and clothing that have been exposed to hazardous chemicals before they are used again. Dispose of all materials contaminated with the chemical product properly and in accordance with MSDS instructions. MSDS stands for Mechanical Standard Developed for Safety, Material Safety Data Sheets, Modifications for Safe Delivery of Substances, Modified Safety Data Standard. A product's MSDS tells you what kind of personal protective equipment to use when working with that chemical product. True or false? Employees do not have a right to know about the hazards associated with chemicals they may come in contact with while at work. True or false? A book containing MSDSs is kept on the job site or workplace, and employees can see this book at any time while at work. True or false? It is not necessary to read the MSDS for chemicals you use in your work unless you are told to do so by a supervisor. True or false? If you are injured on the job, notify your supervisor immediately. No matter how insignificant the injury may seem, report it. Your supervisor will make sure that you receive prompt first aid and, if necessary, professional medical attention. If you suffer a fall, report it to your supervisor. even if you do not think you are hurt. Each company facility and company-owned vehicle at job sites has a first aid kit. Your employer also maintains one or more first aid kits at the job site. You need to know the location of first aid kits in your work area. This is important so that you will have the supplies needed to give yourself first aid for minor injuries. If you give first aid to another person, the first aid kit contains latex medical gloves to help protect you from direct exposure to bloodborne pathogens that may be in the blood, body fluids, or detached tissue of the victim. If you use the last of any item in a first aid kit or notice that supplies are missing, tell your supervisor so that it can be replaced. You may have had first aid and CPR training either through your work or off the job in school or the military. Just remember, when you give first aid or CPR, it is important that you protect yourself against exposure to bloodborne pathogens that may be present in the victim's blood, body fluids, or detached tissues. For example, what if the victim's blood contains the potentially deadly hepatitis B or hepatitis C virus or the HIV virus that is associated with AIDS or some other bloodborne pathogen? Exposure can come from direct mouth contact when performing CPR or rescue breathing, or through contact with blood while applying a bandage or when trying to stop severe bleeding. When giving first aid or CPR, you should take precautions against bloodborne pathogens by maintaining a barrier. For example, you can wear latex medical gloves, use a one-way CPR mask that are provided in first aid kits. You also can wear your safety glasses to protect your eyes from blood contact. Following a serious injury, there may be blood that has to be cleaned off of tools or equipment. Use the same precautions and types of protection mentioned earlier: latex medical gloves and safety glasses. If you are exposed to another person's blood while you are at work by giving help or during cleanup, tell your supervisor immediately. Because you cannot always know if someone is infected with HIV, hepatitis virus, or some other bloodborne pathogen, you must treat all blood, bodily fluids, and detached body tissue of other persons as if they were contaminated. True or false? You are not required as part of your job to give first aid or CPR to another person. You can, however, choose to render aid as a Good Samaritan. True or false? First aid kits are located on all company vehicles and at a designated place on the job site or facility. True or false? You should report any workplace injury to your supervisor immediately. True or false? Only trained and authorized personnel shall perform welding and cutting operations. Daily work permits and safety checklists shall be completed prior to beginning any welding or cutting on a job site. Employees who perform any type of hot work, welding and cutting operations should follow these safety rules. Hot work operations in any work area can potentially create a fire hazard, especially in enclosed areas. Good ventilation must be provided for workers in the area to reduce the level of potentially toxic fumes that can be released during welding and cutting operations. Gas cylinders must be secured in an upright position to keep them from being toppled over. Also, gas cylinders must be in an upright position when in use. Gas cylinders must be capped when transported and when stored at the job site. Cylinders shall never be used as rollers or supports. Cylinders shall be moved by tilting and rolling them on their bottom edges or by using an approved gas cylinder hand truck or dolly. Regulators shall be removed and valve caps put in place before cylinders are moved. Whenever welding or cutting is done, a fire extinguisher of the proper type must be immediately available in the work area. Fire watch procedures will be followed in accordance with your employer's safety procedures and company requirements. Any employee can perform welding or cutting on a job site. True or false? Cylinders of pressurized gas must be kept secured in the upright position to where they cannot fall. True or false? A written hot work permit is required on all job sites prior to doing any welding or cutting. True or false? A confined space is defined as any space that, by design and configuration, there is limited entry and exit, it can be fully entered to perform your work, and the space is not intended for continuous employee occupancy. A confined space can be a pit, chamber, vault, the inside of a tank, or an excavated trench. Any place where gases, fumes, or heavier-than-air atmospheres can collect. Permit-required confined spaces are potentially deadly because they can cause workers to become engulfed in toxic fumes, vapors, gases, or by an oxygen-deficient atmosphere. All personnel at a work location should be able to recognize a confined space situation and understand the basic concepts about confined space dangers. However, this awareness does not qualify or authorize anyone to enter or do work in a confined space. Individual workers must have special training before they can enter and work inside of a permit-required confined space. The main safety rule that you must remember about confined spaces is simple. Do not enter a permit-required confined space unless you have completed the special training and are following all established safety procedures. If you have any questions or concerns about what you believe is a confined space at a job site, ask your supervisor immediately. A ditch, trench, or shallow excavation in the ground is potentially a confined space. True or false? What types of hazardous atmospheres can collect in a confined space? Toxic gases from welding, H2S, hydrogen sulfide, non-poisonous gases that are heavier than air and asphyxiate you by displacing breathable oxygen, all of the above. Working below ground level in an excavation has some of the same potential hazards as confined space situations, plus the dangers associated with cave-ins and being buried under earth if the walls of the excavation collapse. The danger of cave-in and dirt collapsing into the excavation is why proper trenching and shoring safety measures must be in place before anyone enters the excavation. Individuals must have special training to be competent in trenching and shoring techniques. Like confined space safety training, trenching and shoring techniques go beyond the scope of this orientation. Pipelines must be accurately identified and located prior to excavation work. Digging in the wrong place wastes time and money. It can also cause accidental damage to pipe and expose employees and the public to injury and environmental hazards from an accidental release of product or hazardous material. The one-call system has been established nationally to help contractors have accurate information about underground pipelines and utilities before they start digging. Contractors must notify local utilities and operators of pipelines in the area in advance of digging. This is usually done by using the one-call system. Pipeline operators have communications established with one-call systems so that they are alerted about pending excavations in areas where they have underground facilities. When work notices are received, the utilities and pipeline operators check their records and confirm that their underground facilities will not be affected. In the event that they have facilities in or adjacent to the area, the operator will arrange to have temporary markings placed to mark the location of its pipeline. They may also have personnel on hand to oversee the excavation work. The color of the markings indicates the type of facilities underground. Red for electric lines, yellow for gas and oil, orange for communications lines, blue for water, purple for reclaimed water, green for sewer, pink for temporary survey markings, and white for the proposed excavation route. Now let's review. Do not enter an excavation or trench that is deeper than 5 feet unless it has been properly inspected by the competent person. There should be a proper ladder or ramp for getting into and out of the excavation or trench. Ladders must be safely secured and extend 3 feet above the surface level. Exit points should be no further than 25 feet from where you are working. Enter a trench only after the proper protection is in place. Sloping, benching, shoring, or a certified trench box. If you have any questions or concerns about the safety of an excavation or trench, tell your supervisor immediately. Any excavation, ditch, or work underground that is more than 5 feet deep requires special safety training to prevent accidental cave-in and collapse of dirt on workers in the hole. True or false? Even though gases or fumes that are heavier than air can collect in an excavation or a hole in the ground, it is not necessary to treat these work sites as confined spaces. True or false? It is okay for workers to be in an excavation while digging with heavy equipment. True or false? Every industry uses ladders. They are one of the oldest and most basic tools in the workplace. At the same time, thousands of workers are injured every year by falls from ladders. Let's review the safety basics for using this familiar tool. The first rule of ladder safety is to inspect it before you use it. Make sure that the ladder is stable, rated as strong enough for the task, in good condition, and safe to use. Check the rungs to be sure they are not slippery with grease, oil, or other contaminants. Inspect all parts of the ladder for missing parts or foot pads, physical damages, or irregularities. Do not use a metal or aluminum ladder while working with or around electrical components. When setting up an extension ladder or straight ladder, follow the 4-to-1 rule. For every 4 feet of ladder length going up, there should be 1 foot of distance between the ladder's footing and the vertical surface on which the ladder is placed. For example, the base of an 8-foot ladder should be placed 2 feet from the wall. The ladder should extend 3 feet above the surface or landing you are accessing. During work, the ladder should be tied off and secured against falling. Never use a ladder in a horizontal position as scaffolding. The ladder should always extend at least 2 feet above the surface or landing you are accessing. True or false? Nearly everyone drives a vehicle to get to and from work each day. We don't think twice about driving our car or truck to work and home, on and off the job, alone and also with family and friends as passengers. Driving a vehicle may actually be the most dangerous part of your day. More than 1/3 of on-the-job fatalities are the result of motor vehicle crashes. Here are a few tips for driving smart as well as safe. You've heard them before, but they are still lifesavers that good drivers pay close attention to each time they get behind the wheel. Check the condition of your vehicle before you get behind the wheel. Make sure that it is ready for the road. Check that your headlights, brake lights, turn signals, and tail lights are working properly. Replace any burned-out bulbs and wipe off dirty lenses for better visibility. Check tires for proper inflation. It's best to check tires while they are cold to get a more accurate pressure reading. Tires should be inflated to the maximum air pressure recommended by the manufacturer. Check vehicle fluid levels, including the radiator, before the engine heats up and builds pressure on the cap, engine oil, brake fluid, power steering, and battery fluids. Inspect belts and hoses for leaks, cracking, or excessive wear. If any safety-sensitive components need repair, replacement, or maintenance, do not operate the vehicle until it is fixed. Before you shift into gear, make sure that your seat and shoulder belt are latched. Using your safety belts is the law. More importantly, you are around 6 times more likely to survive a motor vehicle crash when properly using seat belts and shoulder harnesses. Do not drive if you have been drinking an alcoholic beverage. Another potential danger is the use of medications. Some over-the-counter and prescription medicines can cause drowsiness. Check the label and follow the manufacturer's instructions. Safe driving requires your full attention. Don't be distracted by reading, looking at maps, or engaging in conversations with others in the vehicle. Watch your speed. Follow posted limits. Adjust your speed to road, weather, and traffic conditions. Once you arrive on the job site, make sure you park properly in a designated area. Your vehicle should not be blocking any driveways, loading docks, emergency routes, or lanes of travel. Wearing a seatbelt is required by the company and by the law. You should fasten your seat and shoulder belts. When you see a police officer, when you leave the parking lot, before putting vehicle in gear, after putting vehicle in gear, and before moving. Many types of cranes, hoist, rigging components, and equipment are used in our industry. We need to be familiar with basic safety rules that apply to these types of operations. The most important rule is to never operate any crane or materials handling equipment unless you are trained, qualified, and authorized to do so. Qualified operators must understand all operating rules and principles for the equipment that they are using. They must inspect, test, and maintain the equipment in accordance with the manufacturer's recommendations. Never operate any equipment that has defective or damaged parts. Replace all components that show signs of excessive wear or defects that could affect the safe operation of the equipment. Check all wire ropes and rigging components. Riggers and others may have to work near a suspended load in order to guide it into position. This is a potentially dangerous situation. Using tag lines can help keep you out of harm's way. The tag line puts distance between you and the load in the event that it shifts or moves unexpectedly. Tag lines can help keep a load under control. But remember, your weight is no match against a load that has started to swing or spin and develop momentum. Let it settle down on its own. Under no circumstances is anyone allowed to stand or work under a suspended load. On the job site, it is often difficult to hear the person next to us. You can imagine the difficulty in hearing verbal commands from a guide or spotter, directing crane, hoisting, or heavy equipment operations. The noise, distance away from the crane or machine operator, and visual barriers make verbal communication nearly impossible. A qualified spotter will use hand signals to communicate with the operator. A set of signals should be agreed upon and adopted at each operation where hoisting equipment is used. Only the agreed upon signal should be used by a designated person. However, in an emergency, anyone may give a stop signal. All persons should be in the clear before a signal is given to move a load or equipment. Qualified personnel will observe specific safety procedures whenever using a sling. Visually inspect the sling before use. Do not use a damaged or defective sling. Don't shorten a sling by using knots, bolts, or other makeshift methods. This weakens the sling's integrity and load lifting capacity. Don't let a sling become kink. Make sure that the sling is securely attached to the loads and that the load is properly balanced in the sling. Don't place hands or fingers between the sling and its load while the sling is being tightened during the lift. Don't shock load a sling. Don't try to pull a sling out from under a load when the weight of that load is resting on the sling. It is okay to walk or stand under a suspended load, as long as the rigging of the load has been approved by a competent person. True or false? Which of the following statements are true for using a sling? Damaged slings should be thrown away. It is okay to tie knots into a sling to make it shorter. It is okay to use a sling that has kinks. It is okay to shock load a sling. All projects should have lunch areas and clean drinking water made available in proper containers and with individual cups. Approved trash containers should be available to separate and properly dispose of discarded cups and other trash. Portable toilets must be provided at a ratio of 1 for every 20 workers on the project. Or transportation must be provided to proper toilet facilities that are readily available.
We've covered a wide range of topics in today's video. Each part is just as important as the next. And we must work together to make sure safety is a top priority every day. Make it your job to know the safety guidelines and use them. Follow all permit requirements. And if you have questions, ask your supervisor. They have your safety in mind. Let's end this orientation where we started, saying one more time that we must all work together to follow safety rules and practice safe work procedures. That's called safety awareness. And it really does work.